I think we have a live mic. Good morning, my fellow HASP scholars. I was a little late getting here this morning because I couldn't find my sunscreen. As you can see, it's applied now. Remember, I remind you of this every time, put it on silent mode, please. Bring it out and silence it. We have 30 new members in HASP, whose names are being projected or will be, and I think 10 guests today. It's either 8 or 10. Ian told me and I forgot. Just as a reminder, admissions are still being accepted for the HASP review. So if you have something you want to write about, a painting you want to display, send it in. Also, the Beverly Ranow has asked me to remind you that there are plenty of volunteer opportunities, which is part of HASP, and they are posted in the HASP office on the bulletin board, or you can just ask Beverly. The quote for today, I know you've been waiting for that. Excellence is to do a common thing in an uncommon way. Booker T. Washington. Today's speaker is Nick Cassidy, who is brought to us by our monthly planning committee. They do a wonderful job every single month. And we have some great programs coming up for you as we progress into 2024. By the way, Happy New Year. Nick Cassidy is a graduate of GVSU. From there, he went to Georgia, where he was taught at middle school. Is that correct, Nick? He received a master's degree in education at Georgia State University. He came back to West Michigan, where he was principal of Holland Middle School, and eventually, in 2022, was named superintendent of the Holland Public School system. His subject today will be small schools and big opportunities. So please welcome Nick Cassidy.
Just test this out. One correction, it was Saginaw Valley that I went to for undergrad. So first of all, I just want to thank you guys so much for having me here, letting me talk and tell you a little bit about what's going on in Holland. It's always an honor to share what we have. And just a brief agenda for today, I want to provide an update on the state of the district, share some challenges and opportunities in Holland, not just in Holland schools, but also in Holland as a community, which I know everyone's interested in. Provide an overview of our strategic plan that we've been working on for the last year, and then discuss the direction of HPS and areas of focus, and then share ways that you can support Holland Public, which many of you are already doing. Just a brief introduction about myself. You can see on the picture on the left, I love to fish. If I could do one thing, I feel like that's probably my greatest strength, but I can't make money at it, so this is what I do. The middle picture is, this was a pretty special day, first day of school this year with all 3 of my kids. Joy is a 7th grader at Holland Middle School, and then my twins, May and Clark, are 3rd graders at West. It's only 3 kids, but it feels like 7, and as I joke a lot, if people knew how worked over I was by 3 kids, they would never let me run a district. So, and then on the right, or on the far side there, the right is my wife, Andrea, who is my rock and the reason I'm in education. I actually went to Millington High School with her. Does anybody know where Millington is? Nobody, right? It's on the east side of Michigan. It's about 10 miles east of Birch Run. In the Birch Run, Frank, they're a small town. She knew she was going to be a teacher from the time she was in 2nd grade. I was kind of a lost soul. We started dating when we were juniors, and I was going to go into construction. That was it. That's what we've done. No one in my family had gone to college, and she's like, you should be a teacher. And so I followed her to school. We graduated from Saginaw Valley State in 2003. I went into elementary education. So 2003 was a graduate. Both of us we couldn't even get an interview in Michigan for a teaching position. And I'll talk about the changes in that as we go through here. So we went down to Georgia. We graduated in April, took a plane flight down to, we went to the Michigan State Job Fair and set up, and we were recruited by some people, and we flew down to Atlanta, Georgia the day after graduation. It was the first time I was ever on a plane. We found jobs, and we could take pics of jobs. I think we had 10 interviews each over 3 days, and we just picked our jobs. And I was a middle school teacher at Haynesbridge Middle School, where I taught quiz bowl and cross country and wrestling at the high school. And after just a couple of years, my principal said, we need more leaders. You should go back to school. And obviously you'll see a theme. I just listen to what people tell me to do all the time. And so I went to Georgia State to get my master's degree in educational leadership. And she talked me into going for an interview at an elementary school right when I got out, and she's like, nobody gets their first one, just do it, and you can, it'll be a good practice for when something comes open. And wouldn't you know it, I got my first interview and ended up going to Spalding Drive Elementary as an assistant principal for 3 years before I moved to Elkins Point Middle School, all within the same district, and strongly encouraged by the leadership in that. That was countywide school system down there, so over 100 schools in that system. When we come here to Holland, we have 6 schools now in Holland. After 2 years there, I was really being pushed into a role as principal, and I was like, I can't devote that much time to this community, because we knew our heart was in Michigan and we wanted to come back. And so we started looking, and Holland Grand Rapids was the hub, and the first job that came open was a K-7 principal position at Holland East, and I applied, and we ended up moving here that year. Everything worked out perfectly and came in here, and we bought a house over on 12th Street right by St. Francis, right across the road from Lynn Berkey. I think she's the one who got me to come here today. Hey, Lynn. And so I started there at East K-7, and I'll tell you, as soon as I came into this community, we fell in love with it. And so the first job, one of the first tasks I had as a middle school, or as the principal at East, was to hire a kindergarten teacher. So remember, 10 years previously, we couldn't even get an interview in Holland. I had a kindergarten opening. We had over 200 applicants for that one. We went through, I bet I spent 2 weeks going through applicants, filtering them down, and hiring a rock star teacher that we had there. After a few years, we changed over to Holland Middle School. With a middle school background, I had told Brian Davis, our superintendent at the time, I was like, that's, I'm in, I want that school. And I thought that's where I would retire from being middle school principal. And some of you, I'm sure you guys had seen the transition that we'd been through in Holland. Brian Davis, longtime superintendent, retired, and we had a superintendent come in only lasted a couple months. It is a tough job, and it just wasn't a great fit, and the board had reached out to me to ask, we need someone that the community knows and knows our teachers. And at that point now, almost 10 years in, I probably had worked with more staff, because after we disbanded, than anyone else in the district. And so I agreed to step in as interim, but I also told them, I made them write it in the contract, that my job as principal would be waiting for me the next fall. And after a couple of months, I realized that they weren't going to let me go back. So, that was December 1st of 21, where I stepped in as interim. And then by March that year, I ended up interviewing and being hired in full-time as superintendent. So it's 2 years now that I've been in this role. And the common questions I get, how's it going? And that answer to that is always dependent on the day. Why did you want to be superintendent? And my answer to that is usually I didn't seek it out. I had never even, when Brian retired, I never even considered applying for it. And so, but I also knew when it was time that this was the best way to serve this community and the kids. How do you like it? Surprisingly more than I thought I would, because I will tell you, I miss being in the building with kids. I loved the pace of the middle school, and anybody that's ever worked in a middle school knows that that is a crazy fast pace, but I do miss that. What's next? this is next. There's nothing more than, and I said that before as principal, but this is it. Like people have asked, would you ever move to another district? I was like, no, I can't imagine doing this role in a district where you don't know the staff and students going into it. And I think that if there's one thing that I've had as a superintendent coming in is a passion and knowledge for our kids in Holland that I love. And then how is Holland turning things around? And I'll talk a little bit about that. And then the other question is, can we have a snow day? And this was the big question last night, yesterday, or as soon as we found out Michigan was going to be in the national championship, this was a question that was coming out. And I'm getting it from both sides. My kids feel like this was Armageddon with the snow that was coming down and they should be home. And my wife threatened bodily harm if I called a snow day and she was going to be home with the kids. So, but this presentation isn't about me. This is really about these guys, the kids. Just unbelievable kids here. But we've been through 2 years of immense change here in Holland. So Brian Davis retired after 13 years as superintendent. I think the second longest superintendent in Holland history. And the average longevity for a superintendent in Michigan is 2.7 years. So 13 years is a good run, and Brian was a great superintendent and did a lot. I stepped in as interim superintendent. In these 2 years, we've had 100% change of central office leaders. A lot of people moving into new spots, retirements, but it's been a good opportunity for change and direction and getting people in who have a common belief of where we can go next. We've had a big change in building leaders, and a lot of that's just from the dominoes that had happened when I was moved out, as we had a lot of people step into interim roles or move into different roles after that. But I'll tell you, through all of this change, the one thing that's made it possible, and when people can say, why is Holland doing so well right now, and it's the community support. And I would definitely put that on, and support from people that have been there. And, I'm in the West Coast Chamber leadership cohort right now going through, and a question came up in one of our meetings was, who is someone who took a chance on you? And my response to that was, I had an entire community take a chance on me, which is pretty spectacular to think about. Over the last 2 years, we've been really doubling down on what is our role in the city. And when I look at the city and the needs of our kids and families, we believe Holland Public is the center of a thriving city, and it's our responsibility to unite the community around the success of all students. And I believe this to my core. And this is what we've been really following and pushing. And I'll talk a lot about the community partnerships that we've had here that have really helped support our kids and pushing us to the next level. So the great appreciation for the community is there is definitely a support and belief in HPS here in this community. And we know that Holland Public has changed a great deal over the last 30, 40 years. As we've gone through, the demographics have changed, the perception of Holland Public has changed a lot. And that's one of the first things that we wanted to address when I started in. But what we know too is for our kids to be successful and to really make sure that they're going forward into this next generation and their kids are in a better spot, they need opportunities and experiences right now. And that's one thing, that's a challenge I'll have for everyone in this room later. And then another thing that we've had in this community, better than I've ever seen in another community, is providing supports for our families. So when I stepped into the role as superintendent, one of the things that I know is when I looked at it, I was like, man, either someone coming in, stepping into the role of superintendent is either going to be, they're too dumb to understand what they're getting into, or they care too much about them. And I probably has a combination of both of those things coming into it. But we also had to realize our enrollment had dropped for the last 30 years in Holland. And I'll talk about why that is a little bit. Part of that is due to the housing market, the aging population, the school of choice, competition with charter schools, all of that coming in, perception of Holland surrounding Holland Public and our kids. Staffing has become an extremely tough thing in all school districts around here, but in a landlocked district like Holland with high housing prices, it hits even harder. So I went around and did presentations at every building and even for the community at that time, kind of defining our reality, saying this is where we are. And some people were like, okay, this is what we have to, this is the hole we're in, this is what we're going to fight out of. And some people were like, man, that's really negative that we're doing that. But I felt like we can't move forward unless we really take a glimpse of where we are right now. It's like stepping on the scale after the holidays, right? Like that's when it's going to make you want to get something done, even if you don't want to do it. But we also had to come up with some really quick wins that we had in Holland. This is our enrollment. This is only going back to 2006. If you took this all the way back to the mid-90s, it was almost 6,000 kids. And you can see we dropped below 3,000 just a couple years ago. That's really tough when you're coming into it. It's tough to plan for stability when we're dropping enrollment. It's tough to encourage staff when we look at enrollment because it's kind of a show of confidence from our community in a school as well. And we realize that. But why is it so important? Well, it's tied to state funding, which I think almost everybody in here probably knows about. You know, it's a per pupil foundation allowance that's coming to us. That's how we operate. I don't want to put dollar tags, a price tag on kids, but that's kind of the business that we're in now. But it determines staffing levels and placements. And if you want something that can really interrupt the staff and demoralize them, it's moving them around every year. And for 30 years, we have been in a place where we have had to move staff because guess what? Now we're going to be down a section here, so we have to move this teacher over here, and it creates a domino effect of instability that's really tough to get people invested in and really loving their job. Because the one thing, do I have any teachers in here, retired teachers? Holy cow. So everybody knows how this is. You take someone who's taught third grade for their entire career and move them to fourth grade, like your truck's gonna get keyed probably, but it is really tough for them. Because what we know is teaching is a never-ending job and it's tough. I will say it, and I've said it to the staff too, I've never worked harder as a professional than I did as a teacher. It's different work now. It's more stressful work. I have never worked harder. I don't care if it was baling hay when I was a kid or shoveling gravel and all the different jobs that I've done. I've never worked harder than when I was a teacher. And when you move them to something that they haven't taught before and they have to learn it all over while planning and teaching and grading, it wears teachers out. And when we look at the staffing crisis we're in now, that's a big part of why schools like Holland who've been through this are struggling the most. If you can right-size that and if you can flatline it, you can plan for stability. You can plan ahead. But it also is an indicator of community trust. And that's what we had to make sure that we understood. When we talk about the staffing shortage and teacher-educator shortage, so I talked about 21 years ago, couldn't get an interview. Then 10 years after that, 200 applicants for one position. When I started as superintendent, we had 2 kindergarten openings, and we posted it. We had 7 applicants. We hired 4 of them. That's where we are in 21 years in Michigan of a change in terms of the staffing that comes through. And with that, I can't tell you how fortunate we've been to bring in outstanding staff in such a limited pool. But what we also realized is that our teacher contract in Holland wasn't letting us to be able to be competitive with surrounding districts. We had fallen almost to the bottom in Ottawa County, but we also know that combined with having some of the most challenging kids at times, that is a recipe for disaster. As we went through, there are 2 things that we have to do. Is we have to make sure that we have enrollment where we need to plan, where we can plan, and we have the revenue coming in, but we also know that we have to be able to, we have to be realistic about where we are going to be and the money that we'll have. But we also know that the staff in our classroom makes the biggest impact on our kids in this community. We ended up 2 years ago, well, last year, we ended up increasing staff pay to put us up above we're not at the top, but we're definitely not at the bottom, but we're a little above the median for Ottawa County right now, which is really helping us, but we have some other things in the contract that help. But for Holland, we're a 17 square mile district. We have 8 competing charter schools that are competing for our kids, private and parochial schools, and then school of choice to West Ottawa, Zeeland, Saugatuck, Hamilton, all these schools. So this competition that's there, probably more than any district I've ever seen. So that's one of the things that we're walking into. When we're looking at housing in Holland, so we said 17 square mile district, remember that includes Hope College campus, that includes the hospital, that includes the downtown, that includes all of the businesses that we have in Holland. Not only that, but we also have a single family homes are hard to come by in Holland now. Where do our new families come into? Staff can't afford to live in the district that we have. I know when I started off living on 12th Street, once we had twins, we kind of outgrew the house that we were in. We couldn't find another house that we could afford in Holland, so I ended up buying in West Olive and then coming down and bringing my daughter with me down to Holland until it switched to middle school. And then I couldn't do that because of the time difference between the schools. This job, when I moved into this, I have more flexibility, so now I can bring the kids with me again, which has been outstanding for me. But when we realized that our staff now, driving from sometimes over by Grand Rapids to Holland, and they get a job here, 10 years ago, if someone made it to 7, 8 years, you had them locked in for a career because no one was offering years of service so you'd get to a point where you were locked in and you had these people. Now, because of the staffing shortage, which is great for teachers, they're in the driving seat for the first time, maybe in history, in terms of coming in and increasing pay and what they deserve, is teachers now that are driving to Holland from 30, 40 minutes away, 7, 8 years in, if there's a school right next to their house now that has an opening, they're like, we'll give you those 8 years and put you on this pay scale, and guess what? You get 2 hours back of driving, and we'll give you that pay, and it's part of the community. That's tough to compete with when you can't afford to buy a home in Holland. And so that's a real reality that we had to face as well. But Holland has an aging population and declining birth rate, and that's there too. But there are still kids here in Holland that we know that we could serve and that we could bring back to Holland Public. But one of the things that we knew we had to address right away was the perception in Holland. We know that people justify a choice, oftentimes by bashing a different choice. And so as people are talking about, I'm choosing to go here, a lot of times that leads to, I don't send my kids there because of this, this, or this. Especially in the digital world with social media, stuff gets a little out of control with that. But what we did know is perception did not match reality of what we're seeing in Holland and what we're getting for an end product of our kids. The one perception that I knew that we could take away right off the get-go is this perception that I felt like had been floating around about, like, poor Holland, you need to come help us because we're serving kids in Holland. We had to get rid of that. So what we came up with an action plan of starting off is we're going to tell our story about what we're doing, the great things that are happening in Holland, the staff that we have, the amazing kids that we have, and we're going to tell that and scream it from the rooftops. But we're also going to invest in our staff and students. We have to invest in our teachers who are the ones who are actually doing the work. We have to invest in them and keep them, and we have to plan for stability and growth. If you plan for decline and if you plan for us, it's become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and we knew that right away. And we have to connect students to opportunities and experiences. The kids who are connected to experiences in school, whether it's clubs or sports or performing arts, those kids are excelling, and I would put our graduates who are involved against any graduates from any school around. Kids who are not involved are struggling. I think that's the same in every district, but it's especially true here in Holland, and that's one thing that we want to do to make sure that we can increase opportunities for all of our kids. But what our reality is, that I don't think was being shared out much, is 30% of our students are attending selective universities, which is as much as anyone else in West Michigan around us. We have kids going on to great things, because of the experiences that they have in here. 60% of our graduates are going to college, and an increased number are going to trade schools. We'll see that pendulum really swing here in the next couple of years. When I started teaching, I remember being down in Atlanta, and schools were talking about 90-some% of their high school graduates from the high schools were going on to four-year colleges. And I just kept thinking, how is that possible? Like, when you dig down deeper in it, they also had the highest college dropout rates in the nation because of the fact that we're forcing kids into something that was not a right fit for them. And we're ignoring some of the trades that we really have to start being able to teach and show that our kids that this is a real opportunity for them as well. And making sure that we're helping kids determine the match earlier on before they're spending a great deal of money or going into debt on something that isn't going to definitely support their future. We had 3 MHSAA scholars in 2 years, which is more than any other high school in the state of Michigan, which is pretty awesome when we talk about getting kids connected. We had another National Merit Scholar last year, and we have another one commended and recommended this year that will be going through. 42 students who received their seal of biliteracy, leaving high school fluent in 2 languages, which is awesome. And this is coming from our immersion program, but also from native speakers that are coming here, and especially more, we have several refugee families coming in, and these kids are thriving and learning a second language here in Holland. Award-winning performing arts. And one thing that I'm really proud of is that Holland Public, I have yet to find a school in Michigan that was open more during COVID than Holland. And I remember meeting with my staff, and I wasn't superintendent there, and I said, our job is to serve this community. This is where we're going to be. If anybody doesn't want to be in here, we'll find a place for you to do remote instruction. But if we're here, we're going to dedicate to serving this community. And I'll tell you, I think that did a lot to bring back and win back some trust from some of the people in our community. And across the district, we did that. And I'm really proud of Holland Public for that. And I'll go through a lot of these very quickly, but these are just some of the kids and faces of what we're doing here. James Bear, MHSA Scholar Athlete. Like I said, this is the 3rd in 2 years, more than anyone else. Meredith Walters, National Merit Scholar. Excellent and superior ratings in our performing arts. This is banned. Because what we started to realize is we're at a real sweet spot in Holland. Because our reality is we are a small district, which at one point, and a lot of people here probably remember when Holland was the biggest district around, we're one of the smallest districts around right now. We're 3,000 students total. West Ottawa is about 6,500, and we have several around like that. But what that brings to us is we're a small district that still offers big district programming in a diverse setting with an amazing staff and a supportive community. And I have yet to find another district around that can say those things in the same way that we have here in Holland. This is why I bring my kids to Holland. Oh, thank you. I didn't. But people are taking notice that Holland, and I took this quote off of online. I try not to get online because there's nothing good that ever goes on there. But someone had made a post on, response to something that Holland is a diamond in the rough. And I really, that registered with me, but we are sharing our successes. We invested in a director of communications. He's great sharing that story online and keeping up with it, and it's something that we have to be able to do to inform people about what we're doing in Holland. And we're engaging the community, and we're bringing people into our schools, and we're getting our kids out there. The next step for us is really trying to get our kids out in the community more so people can really see what we have, and we're creating opportunities. I put on here Trey Turner's. Anybody know who Trey Turner is? Baseball? Thank you. So he just signed a huge contract with the Philadelphia Phillies, and he came in and started off the season with a horrible slump. Batted .237 through the first 4 months of the season with 10 home runs. Philadelphia, who's known for being horrible with their players if they're struggling, usually beat them down, decided to change it up, and they gave him a standing ovation in August. On August 3rd, they gave this guy who's been struggling a standing ovation. For the last 2 months of the season, he batted .337 with 16 home runs. So, it totally turned his season around. I will tell you what we're seeing right now as the support's coming back to Holland. It's kind of that same thing where we have people now that are starting to realize the impact, the positive impact that Holland can have here, are being supportive, and our staff and families are really seeing that and being appreciative of it. So as we are investing in our staff and students, we're also celebrating our staff. And some of this has come from community members who are like, we want to be able to get involved and help. Last year we had someone who said, listen, I would love to support you in a staff Employee of the Year program and stuff like that. That's where the Power H Awards came from, and we went through that, which was really great. If you were in the parade last year or saw the parade, Lai Moscato, 46-year employee for Holland, was the overall winner. She's been an instructional assistant in bilingual, has worked here, like I said, 46 years. I talked to the guy who drove her through the parade, and he said, I've been doing this for like 20 years. I've never heard an ovation like she received through Holland, which was pretty great. We also knew that if we're going to invest in our kids, we really have to do it. And so early last spring, when we started planning, talking with our leadership team and our business department, we said we're going to make sure that we have low class sizes in all of our elementary classrooms. We cannot put out here that says that we're investing in our kids and our community if we're putting kids in a classroom of 30 kids. And if you've ever taught in a class of 30 kids, that it is tough. And I don't care which kids you're teaching, that is tough. So we said we're going to make sure that we're going to reduce class sizes in all of our elementary classes to get down, and we're going to eliminate all splits. And if you know what splits are, that's where like you might have, maybe we have 36 kids in one grade, so that's really a class and a half, and then you have 36 kids in the next grade. That's a class and a half, and they're like, okay, we're going to have a third grade, a fourth grade, and then one of these classrooms is going to be combined and they're going to teach partially third grade and partially fourth grade. That is a recipe for disaster for a teacher and for kids. It looks good on the books, but we weren't seeing the results from it. So what we did is we eliminated splits and made a commitment to do that and lower class sizes, and really focused on hiring early based on what we're doing there. And the numbers came in. As we went through and looked at projections, every place where we eliminated splits, we grew in enrollment, which is a good indicator of what our community is looking for. But we also knew that we have to hire early, especially in the job market that we have right now with teachers. If you wait until July and August to hire, there's no one left. And so we knew that we had to go through and hire. Last spring, we were going to job fairs, and I remember we were at Saginaw Valley, and there was a guy there that were like, oh my gosh, and we pulled him off, offered a contract right there on the spot to bring him to Holland. And I think that was, since I've been here, I can't ever remember us hiring for the next year that early. The new contract catching up, I think, was really huge for us too. But then even the embedded professional development, I know one thing is that this community has been very supportive. We knew that if we are going to get teachers to invest here and be committed here, we have to protect what their daily lives is and be able to have balance. Prior to this, we had almost every Monday night, I see Sue Matthews here, she remembers, every Monday night we had staff meetings and trainings that would go late at night. If you want to wear down a staff, you add on all these late nights and stuff to be able to embed and adjust our calendar where we have an early release day on Wednesday where we're getting out an hour early on those days and can embed consistent schedule of staff development coming in here that will benefit the kids, because what we're seeing is our teachers are more ready for the classroom now. They're more refreshed. They're able to invest in our kids as well. I'll tell you, I've been a very lucky guy too. As I've gone through my career, stuff kind of has just happened to fall into my lap sometimes, and this was one of them. I had Steve Gross, who works for Jubilee Ministries. He was also a board member. He was board president when I started as a principal here. He contacted me right the summer after I started and said, hey, I want to talk to you about a conversation that had started in Holland. We have a community member who's really interested in the direction that Holland is going right now, and their family wants to make a commitment to helping in one of the issues that, one of the problems that you're facing, and that's the housing crisis. And it all came from Steve working with Jubilee Ministries of trying to create these houses affordable for the missing middle in Holland. And that would be for teachers, nurses, different people here who can't necessarily live in Holland. And as he was doing a presentation, Steve talked about one of our Holland teachers over a decade ago, and she presented her dream is to be able to live in Holland where her kids can play with the kids that she's teaching, and she can be, interact with the families that she's serving, and that's her dream. And Steve was telling this at it, and a community member there says, that's what I want in Holland. And went through and talked and did some planning and said, and the idea for Teachers Live Here kind of came from that, inspired by a teacher who's so committed to her kids that she wants her kids living with others, and someone stepped up and said, I want to do this. So I came in, the only thing I've done with Teachers Live Here is I haven't messed it up. And so I came in and we started planning and putting that in, and so last January, we launched this, and it was $25,000 for 10 grants a year for teachers to buy a home in Holland, and to be able to take roots here. And we know that once they do that, they're going to want to stay here. And that's what the benefits from this have come out already. So we started really with a half cycle with all 10 slots. Last January, we had 7 teachers who qualified and took advantage of it. And then we've had 2 more this year, this fall, and we anticipate a lot this spring. Of the 9 that we've had, 6 teachers have bought in downtown Holland or in Holland that they can walk to their schools, which is pretty awesome. And just seeing the benefit, and when you're looking at $25,000 for a teacher to come up of not needing to go through and completely gut your savings, it is life-ching money for some of them. And I'll tell you, when we go to job fairs now and we put up a banner that says, 25, we have Lily Snow Ink, who was our first one, who just happened to be an absolute gift that we announced it on halfway through January, and we had a review later, and she applied and got it and found a house right before the press conference, which I don't know how that happened. And you see her smiling with that. And we go to job fairs, and I'll tell you, it's all of a sudden now for Holland, you have this line of people coming to find out what's going on in Holland. This wasn't something that I did. This is the community that saw a need and did something that is making a huge impact for our staff and will impact our kids in a positive way. That has now changed. They got together and said, well, the cost of living and everything else in Holland is increased, so that needs to go up a little bit with the cost of living, so it's now $25,700. And in addition, if they buy within Holland, the Holland School District, they'll put money towards closing costs as well. But our staff can find homes within 15 miles of our attendance zone. What I'm seeing is the people who are getting this are committed to buying in Holland, but it is tough. In the last 10 years in Holland, there's any new build for under $250,000 has only been built by Habitat for Humanity or Jubilee Ministries. As a teacher she was one of our first recipients, so last January, she just closed on a home this fall. She had been outbid 7 times for homes looking in that $200,000 range. We're talking 850 square foot homes going for $220,000. That's the housing market in Holland right now, one that our teachers are having a tough time being able to invest in and afford. The caveat is that they're going to stay, they commit to Holland for 5 years, which we figured was minimal, but we also were confident enough that once they're here, that they'll want to stay long term. This is a picture of one of our first groups. This was all in a month. We had a bunch of them coming in. Every one of them have found homes and are invested in Holland, and they are a great group. We started our Power H Impact Awards, and as we went through and just wanting to share our stories about the different staff. And what was so funny is putting these out to community members and also to teachers and even students. As it went through, what was so great was we only had one teacher, only one classroom teacher that was in here because all the teachers nominated all the people that helped them do their job. And which was amazing. And so we went through and sharing the stories, what they have here. And if you get online and you can find the Power H Impact Award stories from them, I'll tell you, if it doesn't give you goosebumps, if you don't get the feels, I don't know what's wrong with you because, man, they are some great, great people. But the celebrations that we've had, I would say first and foremost, the students and what our students are going off to get accomplished is a big celebration, but stability, and that's students and staffing. I will tell you, being able to be at a staff meeting just a couple months ago and say right now in November, by next spring, we're planning to keep the exact same sections in every grade and that we're going to plan to keep people in the same spot is something we haven't done in a really long time. And you can see the anxiety drop with people. And so last year it was a goal of ours to be able to say we're going to do our best not to blow up our schedule and move people around. This year we're committing to that again, but earlier than we have before. Preschool, we've increased our preschool offerings up to 7. And one thing that we did differently, several years ago we had our preschool programs in we had it at the Maplewood site. It was an early childhood center. Of kids attending the early childhood center, not in our schools, about 52% of them were coming to Holland Public as kindergartners. We moved them and embedded them in each of our schools, and so a couple sections of preschool in each of our schools. That's 92% now that are coming to Holland Public after their preschool. So keeping them there, making sure that they're part of our school and feeling, because GSRP is a little bit different. They're not technically Holland Public, but they're our family. And they're here, and these are our kids and our families. Class sizes average under 20 in almost all of our elementary classrooms, which is a huge, huge win for us and a change. But when we talk about enrollment, and I talked about how important that is for planning and finances, so 2023, 22, 23, well, first of all, I'll give you a background. We contract with somebody who goes through, and their whole job is to offer projections of enrollment. Over the last 20 years, they've been pretty much spot on all of the time of coming through, to the point where it would always tick me off as a principal because I'm saying, I know we're going to have this. I can't plan for decreased enrollment and blow up schedule. Like, I know there are going to be more kids here. But when we plan for that, that's that self-fulfilling prophecy that I feel like we've had. So when I remember when we did that, defining our reality, the challenge I made to staff is like, we're not going to grow in enrollment right now, but what we have to do is we have to beat projections. We have to beat the GPS. I said, like, I gave the example of when I'm driving in my car, I put in an address, I race against the GPS all the way. That's probably why I have several speeding tickets, but I'm going to beat that. I'm going to beat that every time we go through. When we're given, sorry about that, when I'm given projections for this, we have to commit to beating that. The first year, we were projected to lose 166 kids. We cut it in half. We ended up losing 83. Still a loss, but nothing is dramatic. But when you've planned for 166 student loss, and you can plan on about $10,000 per kid, that's a lot of money back in your budget. We doubled down in pushing that, sharing our story and saying we're going to do things right. We committed to lowering class sizes. We committed to eliminating splits. We were projected to lose 65 kids last year. We increased enrollment by 65 kids, and I believe it's the second time in 30 years that we've increased in enrollment. And that is a huge celebration for us. So when we look at Holland, we are a community school that will unite our community around increasing opportunities and success for all students through dialogue, networking, and learning among families and community members. So the community support and coordination that we have here in Holland, OCSN, Ottawa County Schools Network, this was something that we really started this at East when I was a principal, and it was around mental health support for our kids and getting this. This has now grown, and we based this off a model that was in Kent County. This grew to the point where it went across the ISD. Holland has the most in our schools. We have one in every school, well, 5 schools, and then we have a DHH, Department of Health and Human Services, Pathways to Potential coach at Holland Heights. And what they do is their job is to facilitate community resources and break down barriers for families to have access to those supports, mental health supports, everything else. That group of staff members have also created the Power 8 shop. If you've seen it, we housed it at Longfellow for a while. Now it's at Maplewood. And they work with local businesses and others, take donations, and they provide necessities for our families who are in need, whether it's clothing, whether it's toiletries, whatever it is, back to school supplies. They come there, it's all brand new stuff, and our parents can have it for free. I remember the first night I was there, and I see families walking out with hundreds of dollars of gear that they need that they can now use towards paying their bills. That's life-changing money for some of our families, and that's something that we've been able to provide. Mentors, in one thing that I can say in Holland is that we're really realizing the impact that mentors, especially mentors that look like our kids, can have on them. Working with La Houpe, which has been amazing. Johnny Rodriguez with La Houpe, if you've ever been had a chance to sit in, have a conversation with them and what they're doing to inspire kids in the community, that's great. I Am Academy, Kids Hope, Upward Bound here in Holland. And if you don't know what Upward Bound is, I'm guessing you guys do know. It's through Holland, first generation kids going on to college, and Holland public kids have been able to take advantage of that all the way through. Those are great opportunities that we have here in Holland that are changing the direction of families, generationally changing. Mental health support and counseling, I would say we are ahead of any other district that I know in Michigan of what we're doing to put mental health supports in place for our kids. One of the next steps for us is really figuring out how can we expand on internships and opportunities for our kids in Holland to get them connected with businesses here in Holland. And we've started the conversations, but that's the next level of growth for us. Volunteer opportunities. I would love to get to a point where our schools know what the volunteer opportunities are and our kids are out giving back to the community that's invested in them so much so they can take pride in our community the way that our community has taken pride in them. Holland Hospital and Holland Police Department are in all of our schools, are so supportive, and I'll tell you, that is an envy of so many other districts when I go and when they talk about what we have with our nurses in our schools, our school resource officers, and our community officers in support. It has been unbelievable. And then just the belief and support from the community in us. So again, our role in the city, we are the center of a thriving city, and we know that. A public school that will take anyone that walks through their doors and invest in them and love them and get them where they need to be is critical to a thriving city. But it's also our responsibility to make sure everybody else knows that and is investing in our kids. And so I have a lot of pictures here that I'm going to go through quick. I would say the one thing that I know from the bottom of my core is we love our city. And it comes out, as I was going through, and I just happened to see this post that was made. This was from our communications director, and it was, we love our city, and it's a picture from Tulip Time. But we committed last year, as we started talking about what are the quick wins, we said we are going to be at every community event, we're going to be visible, we're going to be giving back, and we're going to be doing it. And that's what we've been doing. If there's a community event, if it's at the Midtown Center or the Civic Center, Holland Public will be there and have a booth there. And we want the community to see the value in what we're doing. This is a picture of the Power 8 shop that was at Longfellow, back to school event that is there. And man, that is a busy night of getting kids ready for school. CASA and Upward Bound, that's partnered with Hope College. And I'll tell you, if the stories of kids going on there and the opportunities that are coming in, the partnerships that we have with Hope College has been great, and the opportunities that come with them. Last year, we housed, and you may have seen in the paper, in the Sentinel a couple weeks ago, an article about our deaf and hard of hearing program. We're the center in all of Ottawa County. So students, deaf and hard of hearing students come here. One of our staff members on his own said, I want to start teaching our community how to be able to sign and communicate with our kids. And so every Wednesday would run a class that we could go, and it was by Zoom to be able to do that. So the deaf and hard of hearing programs are at West Elementary, the middle school, and then high school going through. My kids are at West and the middle school. I can't believe how much my third graders have picked up of sign language just being there and being able to communicate with kids who are deaf. And it is, but this was something that was really good for me. My son would sit with me the whole time, and I realized how much easier kids can pick up on a second language than I can, because he kept like, Dad, no, that's not how you do it. So, Boys and Girls Club, not just as a school leader that I can reflect on how important they've been to providing after-school opportunities for our kids, but as a dad. As I drive the kids with me every day and I work long hours, my kids go to Boys and Girls Club every day after school. I get a call every day from my daughter, May. This is, Dad, can you not pick us up until 6:30 today? Which is when they close, because she loves it so much, but they go there. And so we're at a spot right now where they come with me. I know they're in a building that with adults that care about them, and they go to an after-school program where they know they have adults and kids who care about them. I can't think of a better situation to be in as a parent. Just the city of Holland and how much they support our schools. Even, you can just see by their website stuff that they share with it. Opportunities of giving back. This was the Humane Society. Artists, designers, vets, anybody coming out for career fairs talking about opportunities for kids. The fire department, this was a back to school event I believe this was at Meadow Lanes. The kid that's jumping through the fountain, that's my daughter, May, who happens to be everywhere. I was like, of course, she's the one front and center getting doused by the fire hose, but just great communities. BPW coming out and doing science lessons with our kids. The Aquatic Center donating stuff to our Power 8 shop. A back-to-school event coordinated through I Am Academy, Boys and Girls Club, and LAUP and Holland Public. Peer-to-peer, which if you don't know what peer-to-peer is, it was started by some teachers in Holland, and I know it exists in other districts as well, and it takes students, categorical special education students, who might not necessarily fit the mold of the typical mold in school, and it's pairing them with a gen ed student and creating opportunities for them to have opportunities together. What we're seeing with this, and then we have bowling nights and activity nights. My daughter is starting this today with a student, and she's actually going to the high school with the 7th grade student who's actually at the high school for the special education classes. And what we found is the gen ed students are benefiting substantially more than the special education students, but everybody is benefiting. If you ever see an opportunity to see peer-to-peer in action and be there, I strongly suggest you take advantage of it, because it will make your day. Holland Police, this is Officer Padron reading to a classroom. Again, Hispanic Heritage Month leaders, Hispanic leaders in the community coming into our schools and just making connections with our kids and inspiring kids about possibilities. Partnerships for summer school and summer programming, Outdoor Discovery Center, Ready for School, GSRP, all of these are coming together to provide opportunities for our kids. And Outdoor Discovery Center has been great for us too. As you've seen, we've turned Holland Heights into a nature-based program that's focused on that, on outdoor activities, and tying that into reading, writing, math, everything else that goes along with it. But what we're seeing is the kids absolutely love it. Ready for School, as providing additional opportunities for our kids to make sure that they are ready before we come in. How am I doing on time? 5 minutes? Okay. So I'm going to get through some of these pretty quick. Nature-based learners, again, more TWBI students meeting with leaders in the community. Hispanic Heritage celebrations. And I'll go through some of these really quickly because I've talked about some of these. Mezcla, giving back. We had a teacher who came up with the idea of putting a disc golf course on the Holland High campus, and reached out to community members, and they sponsored holes and did this, and then we have this. Now Holland Rec is wanting to do a league there. At night, when I have late nights, I'll see families out enjoying this, and that's what we want. Like, we want to be able to give back to our community as well. This is Karina Martinez, one of our students, who she is a junior now. She's already presented for the Hope Women of Color here. She's been a presenter and speaker at La Oops conference program, and she's already met the state school superintendent twice. Like, I can't name many teachers who've ever met them that much, to the point where he has specifically asked me about her when I run into him. She started into our Future Educators program, volunteering her time. But those are opportunities that have been created in this community by different organizations that she's speaking in front of and advocating for kids. Community partners helped us put together this greenhouse in front of the middle school, which some would say it's an eyesore, but it's also something that is great in real life opportunities for our kids. Giving Back Exit Left Theater, again, some celebrations that we've had, and Escape Ministries, supporting kids who have made some bad choices, but knowing that we can get them back on track of where they've been, and they have been critical in supporting us. Iconto, Holland Community, Holland Zealand Community Foundation, and the supports that they're giving. And I'll end on this one, coming from Giselle Torres, one of my students. She was the first kid I ever met when I came to visit Holland, and I still remember her. And I went to Collin Park that night. I had visited some of the classrooms. She was in Lori Krugel's second grade class, and she saw me and my family, and she came up to me and said, "I saw you. You were in the suit at our school today." And she was in second grade. She graduated last year, but as she's gone through here, she's been going to the tech center she's been going back and forth between being a nurse or a police officer, and so she took CPR classes at a fundraiser for her softball team. A toddler started choking on a hot dog. Every adult froze. Giselle jumped in, performed the Heimlich, and saved the kid. And so, like, when we're looking at big-time impact that our kids can have, I mean, this is it. So, I know I'm running out of time. I thought I would get through this in 40 minutes today, so vision statement from Holland, and I'll just go through the first couple things of the core values and the vision statement. Holland Public Schools, in partnership with the community, will be recognized as the educational home for students, families, staff in the greater Holland area, and we will embrace, engage, and equip each student for success in an ever-changing world. Our core values, and so several years ago, as we started talking through how do we support kids and teach expectations, high school kids came up with the Dutch matrix. And so this is why it's so important to me to keep this: diverse, united, thrive, committed, and honorable. They said that those were the 5 core values that they thought that they were getting at Holland High School. And we adjusted this for our strategic plan. So diverse, we embrace, value, and celebrate the qualities that make us unique, and believe it is our collective responsibility to foster respect, a sense of belonging, and success that honors each individual. In United, we believe Holland Public Schools is the center of a thriving city, and I know I've told you this one several times already, and it's our responsibility to unite the community around the success of students. Thrive, we promote a culture of excellence by challenging ourselves and others to grow academically, socially, and emotionally. Committed, that we dedicate our best effort to ensure our exceptional educational experience for every student in our community. And honorable, we uphold and promote integrity, respect, honesty, and fairness through our policies and practices. I won't go through all of that because I know that we'll probably have some questions, but I'll also, once we're finished with our strategic plan, which we're on the downside of being able to actually finalize and get board approval, I'll post that for all of you too to be able to see on our website. So I guess that I can wrap it up there because the next part will probably take a bit to get through.
You have time for Q&A.
First of all, thank you. I am taken by just your energy and your passion for what you do. I'm also taken by your comment that the average tenure of a superintendent is 2.7 years. I'm not surprised because I observed that in the school district of which I was a part in Ohio for the last 40 years. So my question for you is this: do you have someone other than your spouse who you trust, in whom you can confide and unload, who will not tell you what you have to do to fix the problem, but just listen, and who will keep everything you say confidential?
I do, and I think that that is so critical in any leadership role of having that. I'll tell you who my person is, and whether she knew she signed up for this or not, but she has. Rosemary Irvine, which some of you probably know, she was a former superintendent for West Ottawa, and she's come in and helped coach some of the administrators, and she's kind of been my person. Like I said, I don't know if she knows that, but she has been great in the rock. But I have, being down in Atlanta and having formed relationships with people there in Holland, all over, I have a lot of people that I can go to. I will say one thing, and I talked to Scott Travis, right? His dad is superintendent in Saugatuck, and I was talking to him a little bit too. Stepping into this role, especially something that I didn't necessarily seek out, I always felt like, oh, I'm going to be the little kid trying to sit at the adults' table. I'll tell you, the group of superintendents in Ottawa County has been remarkable and so supportive, and I think that really helps with it. It's 2.7 years for average superintendents, but in more urban districts, it's less than a year. I have 16 years left.
Great job that you're doing. My question is, how important is it to you to have a supportive school board, and do you foster school board member training?
Yeah, so I will tell you, seeing what has transpired in some communities with their school boards and community, I am so blessed to be in Holland in what we've had here, and we have a great board. We have a great board of professionals here who care deeply about Holland Public and our kids. That is great. I will say one of the things that I need to work on with them more too is looking through of how do we improve as a board of just being more productive and pushing the training. As said, coming into something not having a background or even, I guess, never seeking this out, that's one of the things that superintendent board relations, which we have great relationships, but we also, I think we could be way more productive with it. So that might be a next level of work for us.
I was a resident on 25th Street, just down the road from middle school, and my next-door neighbor's children went there. I'm glad to have learned about the school that they attended. It sounds really great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Good.
I wanted to ask, we keep reading in the paper about the state increasing the amount of money that's going to schools. How has it, you had something up there a little while ago, but how has it translated to Holland?
So I think how it's translated to Holland, what we're realizing in the state, and this is one thing that'll come up, is education was so grossly underfunded since the early 2000s. That's why we're seeing the state of education that we're in now in terms of staff, teachers, people looking to go into education. The increase the last couple of years has helped us at least keep the bottom line in the black of where we're not looking at cutting. So we could have the opportunity right now to invest and plan for stability. We haven't had that luxury several years. So I'm coming in at a pretty good spot in terms of the COVID money that's come in and the relief funds there. That helped us to be able to invest in some of these things to try to stabilize. It is a worry of a lot of districts around here. What happens when that additional influx of funds goes away, which will be happening. We've tried to not add new staff that will then come back on it, and really tried to focus the money on grant funds and then trying to stabilize the district. So it's been a huge help for us here the last 2 years.
Because there is so much attention to, concern about the political implications of how schools are supposed to be teaching our kids. Are you feeling any of that? Do you have the independence and the authority to decide curriculum and books and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I will say there's no district that I've seen that's trying to push any political ideology on kids. They're trying to teach kids and improve kids' their position in life more than anything else. I think schools over the last couple of years have been the political hot seat because everyone has easy access to it. I will say in Holland, we've largely been able to dodge a bullet in some of the distractions, and that's what it is largely. It's been a distraction of the work that we're trying to do to serve our kids. But I've been very fortunate to have such a supportive community here, and that's been key, because it would be really tough to do this job, to go to a board meeting every night and have nonstop public comments about how awful you are. And I've been hearing that from a lot of districts, and I know right before the board election last year, and we would have a couple comments in about books and stuff, but like one or two here or there, and we came in, and I think it was the October board meeting, and the boardroom was completely packed. It was, every chair was filled, and I'm like, oh, good grief. Like, you come in, it was a nonstop parade of people coming up and giving praise to our teachers and administrators for serving our kids. And when I tell that story to other administrators, they're like, you have to be kidding. That doesn't happen anywhere else. And so it's pretty awesome.
Nick, can you give us a little idea of what the future is going to be for the old Maplewood School and Longfellow School?
Yep. So right now, and I didn't get to Bill 21 bond updates that we have, as we've been fortunate enough to have a community that's been supportive of going through. Right now, so this year, Holland Heights is going to be, starting this summer, Holland Heights is going to be a majority of a rebuild, of coming through there and investing in that. The students from that school will be going to Longfellow School for the next 2 years while we refurbish that and bring them back. When that is done, we'll have to have the conversation what to do with Longfellow. I think there's great opportunities there, especially looking at career and technical opportunities for our kids in this area, and that's what I would hope for. Maplewood, I think that's a discussion that we know we're at a point where right now, over the next couple of years, we'll be housing some of our like Head Start and some of our early childhood programs there while we work through some of our bond projects. But after that, we're going to have to look at what that site is going to look at. But I don't think that's going to be a viable school. I think continuing to keep that operational is not in our best interest. So that's something that when we get to that point, we'll be involving the community of what that could look like. But I also know as a place that needs more people moving in and houses for teachers, there might be an opportunity for that too. But that's not something we would do and move forward with without community support.
I would like to thank Nick for bringing us up to date on the state of Holland Public Schools and the very bright future. I'd also like to thank him for reminding us all that education and teaching, they're not a job, they're a calling. And lastly, I want to apologize for giving Grand Valley State credit for your education.
That's okay. It's quite one thing I'll end on, because I wanted to get to it. One thing I'm very excited about right now in Holland is we have a group of parents and community members who are really getting behind, and the Holland Educational Foundation really has some teeth right now of moving forward, and I think you'll be hearing from them and seeing good things coming from them, trying to support our teachers and kids. And so that is a QR code to the website that they have, but keep an eye out for the Holland Educational Foundation. We have some great people here who have a big, big vision for Holland Public, and I am so excited about that too.
Thank you again. It's been a wonderful presentation. David has given me a reminder, pretty easy to read. For those of you who have not had your photograph taken for the directory, Ralph is sitting right over there. He will take your picture, so please take care of that. I'll see you in a month. Class is dismissed.